I can't tell you how many water bottles I own. They seem uncountable. I've got this cupboard up above my fridge that is essentially a water bottle graveyard, and I have learned to open that cupboard very carefully because those neglected water bottles are just waiting up there in the dark. And one of these days, one of them is going to make a break for it and take me out on the way down. Pure revenge for being replaced by the next best thing. You might have that same cupboard with the Stanley and the Yeti, the Hydro Flask, and maybe even an Nalgene stuck way, way, way in the back. And maybe your cupboard has one of those bottles with the little motivational markers on the side. Drink here by 10 a.m., drink here by noon. Because apparently we need our water bottles to coach us through the day now. And we carry them everywhere. Meetings and workouts, school, car rides, even church. When did that become the thing we bring everywhere? When did water become part of the wardrobe? These water bottles were supposed to be one way of saving the earth from plastic, but instead we have turned water into a personality trait, a mark of sophistication, a $50 billion industry. We've always been that way, though, haven't we? Which brings me to a well in Samaria. It's in the middle of the day. The sun is high and the heat is serious. A woman is walking down the road towards Jacob's well, one of the oldest, most storied wells in the region. It's a real well, a good well. Jacob dug it and his sons watered their flocks there. It has history and depth, and it seems to have never run dry. And she has a jar. Of course, she has a jar. That's what you bring when you come to a well. That's what you do when you're thirsty. You carry something to hold the water. You make the trip, you do the work, and you bring it back. And she's done this before, and she'll do it again tomorrow. And sitting at the edge of the well, tired, dusty from the road, no bucket, no jar, nothing to draw water with, is a man she doesn't recognize, a Jewish man, which is already strange. Jews don't travel through Samaria if they can help it at all, and yet here he is. And she approaches carefully. She needs the water. She doesn't have a choice. And Jesus, because of course it's Jesus, looks up and says, "Give me a drink. Give me a drink." That's how it starts. Jesus, tired, dusty, sitting at a well, and he can't even draw from because he's got no bucket, no jar, he's got nothing. And he asked a Samaritan woman for water. And then she stops. Because this isn't how things work. Jews and Samaritans don't share vessels, they don't share wells, they don't share anything if they can help it at all. The animosity between these two people runs centuries deep, and yet here he is asking anyway. How is it you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? So she holds her water jar back from him. The ordinary clay jar she carries every day becomes this symbol, in this moment, a symbol of every wall between them. She's saying, you don't get my jar. You don't get my water. We don't do that. And Jesus says, if you knew who was asking, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Living water. In the ancient world, water came in essentially two forms: cistern or well water, collected, stored, still, sitting in a container, waiting to be used, and then living water, flowing, moving, always fresh because it's always moving. And the prophet Jeremiah knew the difference between the two. Centuries before this conversation, Jeremiah looked at his people and said, "You have forsaken the fountain of living water and dug out cisterns for yourselves." And those cisterns are broken cisterns that can hold no water. Broken cisterns, jars that leak. And we're jar people. We carry them everywhere, not just meetings. We carry jars full of achievement, hoping that if we accomplish enough, we'll finally feel full. We carry our religious jars, showing up, doing the right things, checking the right boxes, hauling our faithfulness to the well and hoping this time it's not cracked. So there she is, standing at the well, holding her jar back from Jesus, not knowing who she's talking to, and she pushes back. "Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well?" She's not being dismissive, she's being serious. This is Jacob's well, the patriarch, the man who wrestled with God and walked away with a limp and a new name. Jacob dug this well and it has never run dry. This isn't a bad well. This is the best well available. And we don't fill our jars at obviously bad wells. We go to good wells, real wells, wells with history and depth and a track record. We go to our careers. Meaningful work is a gift, it truly is. But somewhere along the way, the career becomes the well. The next promotion, the next accomplishment, the next title will finally be the drink that satisfies. It never quite is. So we go back tomorrow. We go to our relationships, and we have all tried to drink something from another person that no person was ever designed to provide. Standing at the edge of a human well, demanding living water from someone just as thirsty as we are. We go to war. Nations have always believed that enough power, enough force, enough bombs would finally resolve what's broken between us, would finally satisfy something. And this week, it's not an abstraction. We are watching it happen in real time as Iowa soldiers come home in flag-draped transfer cases, as politicians stand there with a hand over their heart or a salute, and the thirst remains. It always remains. And yet, Jesus offers us something different. Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. It's not an accusation, it's a diagnosis. The water, that water was never designed to satisfy the thirst we actually have. And the woman knows it. She doesn't argue. She doesn't defend Jacob's well. She just says, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw." Still thinking jar, still thinking bucket and well and water that you carry home, but she's asking, and that's enough. And then Jesus does something unexpected. He doesn't hand her a bucket. He doesn't point her to a better well. He doesn't give her a map or a method or a self-improvement plan for managing her thirst more efficiently, as much as we would all love to have one or be given one. He looks at her and says, "Go call your husband." And just like that, the conversation shifts because she doesn't have a husband. She has had 5, and the man she's with isn't her husband. And Jesus knows this and knows all of it, knows her in a way that a stranger sitting at a well simply should not. And here is where I want to be careful, because we have a long history of reading this moment as exposure, as shame, as Jesus cataloging her failures. But read it again without all the baggage that we bring into the text. Jesus doesn't condemn her, doesn't lecture her, doesn't send her away. He simply shows her that he knows her fully, knows her completely, and he's still sitting there, still offering water. That is not condemnation. That is grace. And she knows it too. She doesn't run, she goes deeper, and she asks about worship. Which mountain, which temple? And she's asking the oldest question nearly every person has. How do we get to God from here? And Jesus opens up the whole world. This isn't about this mountain or that mountain. It isn't about the right location or the right ritual or the right jar carried to the right well the right number of times. God is spirit. Those who worship God worship in spirit and in truth. The jar doesn't get you there. The well doesn't get you there. So she says, I know that the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will proclaim all things to us. She's just so close. And Jesus looks at her, this woman, this Samaritan, this person that every religious boundary of his day said he should not be talking to. And Jesus looks at her and he says, I am he, the one who is speaking to you. I am. Not I will be, not I might be, not come back when you've figured out the right well. I am. The words that God spoke to Moses from a burning bush. The name above all names, sitting at the edge of Jacob's well, tired and dusty and without a bucket, offering water anyway. This is how grace works. It doesn't wait for the right person at the right time with the right jar. Grace shows up at the wrong well in the heat of the day across every boundary that should be and have made it impossible, and offers everything anyway. Grace upon grace has always been this way. And she knows that now. The long-expected Messiah sitting here, offering right now, no conditions, no prerequisites, no jar required. And the woman turns and walks back towards the village, and she is overflowing. She leaves, and the jar stays behind. Just sits there at the edge of Jacob's well, right where she set it down. Empty, untouched, never filled for him, never filled for her. The whole reason she made that trip in the heat of the day, sitting on the ground, unnecessary, forgotten. Think about that for a moment. Jesus asked for a drink at the very beginning of the story. That was his opening line. Give me a drink. That's why she approached the well. That's why the jar was there at all. And somewhere in the middle of the conversation, in the middle of I am and living water and everything that this encounter has become, the water is forgotten. The jar never got filled, and nobody noticed. Because something happened at that well that made a clay jar full of water completely beside the point. She came thirsty and left overflowing. She came carrying a jar because that's what you do when you're thirsty. And she left it on the ground because she finally understood something. Water in a jar is not living water. The moment you contain it, you store it, you manage it, you carry it, it stops being living. And that's not the failure of the jar. That's just the nature of what Jesus offers. You cannot put grace in a container. You can't haul it home, you can't ration it carefully, and you can't make it last until the next time you need it. Water in a jar is not living water. Grace upon grace cannot be stored. It flows. You can't accumulate it. You just receive it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Freely, without return trips, without the jar. So what are you carrying? What jar have you been hauling back and forth to wells that never quite satisfy? What have you been trying to contain and manage and carry home carefully without spilling? Because Jesus is still sitting at the well, still offering, still without a bucket, still not needing one. In a few minutes, we're going to come to the table. And I want you to notice something about the invitation. You're not asked to bring anything. No jar, no offering, no evidence that you've finally gotten it together or that you've managed your thirst well enough to deserve a seat. You're just asked to come forward with palms open to receive it. Jesus is already at the table, already here, already offering, just like he was already at the well before she arrived, present and waiting, not to receive, but to give. And the bread and the cup are not a reward for people who have carried their jars faithfully. They are living water for people who are finally ready to leave the jar behind. So come. Come thirsty, come empty. Leave the jar in the pew, whatever that is for you. There is no need of it, because it's grace upon grace, upon grace, upon grace. Amen.